Hello. Today we are going to talk to Sean Broderick, who's coming to us from South Jersey, near Philly. Welcome, Sean. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to
So,
have you. So how,
yeah,
yeah,
you talked about prior to us getting on, and I want to hear about that, how you started thinking about adoption trauma. You had heard that term, and so you started Googling, and then you found us. And now I feel like I'm going to have a coughing fit. Strange. Okay.
All
We'll have
good.
the edit. We'll have the edit. We'll have that edited out. So what, like, how did that, tell me what that means? Because, so did you just kind of, like many adoptees, oh, I was adopted, and you live your life and then something triggered? Like, what was the process of that? And then you can back up and tell us your story, but I'm curious about that.
mm-hmm.
Sure. I never. I'm like from as far as I can remember. I've always known I've been adopted. It was never a secret. It was never held back from me. As a matter of fact, my mom used to tell me I would go up to complete strangers when I was a kid and say, "Hi, I'm Sean, and I'm adopted." It was just one of them things.
Like the badge you wear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. I'm not even sure I knew what it meant back then.
Mm-hmm.
So. Uh, as far as discovering you guys, I never really thought much about it. I always accepted it. Okay, it is what it is. My mom would tell me, hey, there's going to become a day where you're going to want to know who your biological parents are, biological family. And I never really gave second thought of that, to be honest with you. I was always in the mindset that, nah, that's not true. I'm content. I'm fine. Uh, but when I reflect back on my 53 years of life now, and think of some of the struggles and drama that I've been through, uh, when I discovered the term adoption trauma and started reading up on it, I was like, oh my goodness, a lot of
Mm.
this I can relate to. Anger issues, not feeling whole, like there's a hole inside of me.
Yeah.
You know, did not so much when I was younger, but as I became more of an adult and grown into who the person I am today, not really fitting in or feeling like I fit in. So these are things that always bothered me. I've always had trouble with relationships. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of it had to do with the anger that I didn't know where it was coming from inside of me. And my inability to control the anger at times, and just identify where this was coming from. Uh, I was easily triggered, and I didn't know why. And somehow, by chance, some way, I did come across the term adoption trauma, relinquishment trauma, and I started Googling it. And that's when I started discovering articles, and your podcast, and just things that captured my attention, that just wanted me to learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, here I am a year later, and I still think that there's something to it. Just recently started working with a therapist through this, and
Like
you know,
a
I,
who
I
specializes in adoption?
yeah. I ever since discovering it, I've been looking for somebody who kind of specializes in adoption trauma. And it hasn't been easy. There's
No,
not a
I
lot out
know.
there.
There's not.
No.
I like that you're speaking out about this. Not a lot of men speak out about going to therapists and trauma. Nowadays they do, but it's nice to hear just that you're like, I got to figure this out. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. I think it's healthy.
Good.
I work in a field where therapy is encouraged. And I'm not ashamed to say that it's not the first time I've gone to therapy as well. Now, for this specific topic, it is. But I've gone for marriage counseling, and
Mm-hmm.
issues related to the marriage, that a marriage counselor had suggested that maybe you and my now ex-wife should get um, individual counseling, and address your own um, issues, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, So, I did take that advice, and I looked forward to going to a therapist and just being able to talk, because I don't feel that comfortable actually. Just sitting here talking with both of you, I feel more comfortable telling you about my past than I do with somebody that I have a history with, strange as
Mhm.
that may be.
Well, as you know,
Yeah.
when you have intimacy involved, it's dangerous, kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it is safer to talk to, well, first of all, you're talking to two fellow adoptees,
Right.
who can relate to you.
Yeah.
And secondly, we're not, it's not emotionally risky with us.
No.
So,
Boy, can I relate, like my first marriage, tons of counseling, but we didn't dig deep into my stuff,
Yeah,
or his really. And you can't, it's like this blockade, right?
that's exactly what it felt like. It's like we were going through the motions, but it didn't
Mhm.
feel like anything was coming from it. It just felt like
Yeah.
we were standing in this quicksand, so to speak,
Yeah.
and just couldn't get our feet moving and moving forward. And sad as it may be, because we did eventually divorce, and it's not the direction I wanted to go into. But at that time, we had two young daughters, and the fighting in front of them wasn't healthy for them, wasn't healthy for us, and we realized, hey, we at the time it was just a separation, but the separation just turned into ultimately
Mhm.
divorce. So, and I've had several relationships since that divorce that have. Uh, I don't know what the right term to use is, but haven't been healthy. The one I am in right now it's it's what a relationship should be. Let's put it this way. Um, and I'm 4 years into it at this point, but I still hold back from I don't even know how to address it, but I still have my shortcomings. I still hold back from letting this blossom into what it should be. I'm
Yeah.
scared. I don't want to get burned again. It's a lot of different emotions, but it's a great relationship, and thank God I found her. Her name is Shanna.
Oh,
that's
shout out.
great. So, so where were you born, and have you been in Reunion? I'd love to hear that.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I got quite a reunion story. So I was born in Philly. My birth mother was 18 or 19 at the time when I was conceived.
And so you're a
And
baby scoop, obviously.
yeah, I guess I was born in 70.
Yep.
So I think I fall into that time era.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It was, and this obviously I found out after reunion, but it was not a very lengthy relationship between my biological parents. It was a puppy love type of thing where they started dating in February 1969, and I was conceived Memorial Day of 1969, Memorial Day weekend. I knew the whole story. And she told my birth father, they were going away to the Jersey Shore for the holiday weekend, and she told my birth father, I'm ovulating. Make sure you bring protection. And he must not have, because here I am.
Boy, what a
Uh,
thing to know at 18. I don't think I would have known that at
yeah,
18.
right. That kind of blew me
Me
away in
neither.
itself.
I'm definitely like,
I barely figured that
I'm
out
from
later.
Missouri. We didn't have sex ed.
I'm like ovulating.
Right. What's that?
Oh, that's
But
fun.
she knew her body at that young age, and she was right. And shortly after finding out that she was pregnant, that's where they went their separate ways. Um, she told me that she wanted to think that they were in love, but they were in love with being in love.
Yeah. They're
Hormones.
young. Yeah.
Hormones.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyway,
Did he try to support her at all through any of that? Or did he not know?
well, so from what I'm told, his parents sent him to upstate New York to live with relatives up there in the Rochester area.
Mhm.
And but before going away, he offered, or actually after he went away, he met with her a month later after getting a job and said, I'd like to support the baby and help you out. And I was just reading, refreshing my mind right before we got on here, because I have all this information that was given to me. But she refused. take any money from him. Said, I'm not going to take anything from you. And then later on down the road, when his mom found out, she too went and approached Judy. Judy's my birth mother. She approached Judy and said, I'd like to help out financially. But again, it was told to me that they refused. Judy's mother, who would have been my biological grandmother, didn't want them doing anything once he took off, they didn't want him doing anything with me, the baby. So Judy came from a family. She was one of 7, I believe, the third of 7 children.
My biological father is the oldest of 7 sons.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting.
And I get them confused. One of them was Catholic and the other was Protestant, or vice versa. But that was kind of taboo back in those days to mix religions and having kids out of wedlock or whatnot. So,
such an antiquated term, isn't it? Out of wedlock.
Yeah, right. Just giving away my age.
Like, dear Lord.
It's all our age. We know what it is.
But Judy also had a father who he was emotionally abusive. He was verbally abusive, and he was an alcoholic. And they were dealing with who would have been an uncle of mine who was dealing with a drug addiction. So they had a lot of drama already going on inside the house. So with the encouragement of Judy's mother, they said, we're not going to tell your father about this. And they chose to go the adoption route. And that's where they went to Philadelphia Catholic Charities and requested to stay with them. And well, actually they stayed in a hospital in Philly, and that's where she gave birth to me. But then Philadelphia Catholic Charities is the one that did the adoption process. I was adopted shortly after being born. I went home like a month later in April. I was born in March of 70. I went home in April of 70. And, from what I thought, I've always had a pretty decent upbringing, childhood. I never regretted being adopted. I didn't think much of it. I had my moments of thinking, well, I wonder if that's my mom, or I wonder if that's my dad, or.
Did you have any adopted siblings or any biological?
No,
Did your parents have
question.
biological?
That's a great question. So I was adopted into a family where Joseph and Miriam, my adoptive parents, already had a son, their own biological son. He was born in 62, so he's 8 years older than me. And between 62 and 70, they tried adding more kids, but they just weren't successful. So that's why they went the adoption route. Matter of fact, he was the first one to hold me when I was brought home from mom told. My mom always told me that, oh, Joey was the first one to hold you. So, but sadly, as we grew up, that age gap kind of, in my mind, kind of prevented us from developing a close relationship. We never had common interests growing up because of the age gap. And also, years down the road after being adopted, my parents divorced. So my brother ended up living with one of our parents. I lived with another parent. So when I got to an age where maybe he could identify with and start, we could start a bonding process, then we were living under separate roofs at the time. And then off he went to college, and he now lives out there in Burbank, California, and he's been there since like the early 90s. So
how old were you when they divorced?
I was about 9 or 10 years old.
Divorce is hard on kids, period, but I think it's can be extra hard on adopted people, at least from anecdotally from hearing people share and my own experience. Really hard.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I've given that a lot of thought over the last year. That's probably added to my quote unquote trauma experience.
It's another abandonment.
Yeah, it was hard for me. I do remember sitting down at the kitchen table when they sat my brother and I down, telling us, "Hey, we're gonna divorce." Not so much in them terms, but that's what the bottom line was. And I just remember feeling empty inside, and feeling so helpless that I couldn't do anything. And I don't know if I felt guilty, if I felt like it was like they're divorcing because of me. I don't remember having that feeling, but I do remember hopping on my bike and just riding for hours and hours and hours. And I just didn't want to deal with anybody. And, it was like from that moment on, I felt like it was always me against the world.
That's the same.
Yeah. And to this day, I even have I even have trouble asking people for help because I still kind of have that in my head that it's me against the world.
Yeah.
Even though I know that, it's like you gotta do better of working with people and asking for help. Something holds me back. There's a barrier.
Did you get any, I was thinking about this. I was speaking with my own son last night, who we divorced when he was in 7th grade, and he did this. He feels like that. We were talking about it last night, and I look back and think, I wish we did more for resources and stuff. Did you have anything like that, or was it just kind of like, this is how we go forward?
I do recall going through some therapy back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was through my mom's encouragement. But I was becoming of the age where now I was becoming defiant.
Yeah. That's kind of what we dealt with. Like, I don't want to go to that. And
yeah, exactly. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I went only because I had to, but I don't recall getting anything beneficial out of it.
Yeah.
And I always was I say problem child. I mean, I wasn't, the Omen or anything like that, but I always gave
Damien.
Yeah, exactly.
Damien. You have some good references, Sean.
I had to think about that. Am I using the right term here? But I was always a difficult child. And now that I read more about, the primal wound and all that, it kind of makes sense as well, always pushing the envelope and
it does, right?
It's like, so there's something else I identify with. So yeah, I did go to counseling, but I don't recall getting anything beneficial out of it. It was me being resistant and just going through the motions and, hey, let's get this done and over with. Type of
So
thing.
being that you and your brother, who was 8 years older and not your biological relative, or, it must have felt lonely, like going forward after the divorce.
There was times of that. I had many friends growing up. So I recall in my adolescent years, I would say between the ages of, maybe 7 to 11 years old, I had a really good friend who I spent all my time down there.
Oh, that's good.
His parents, his house. And I felt like that was my family. His parents treated me like I was their own, and they were always taking me on vacations or just, hey, come on over and hang out with us, have dinner or sleep over or hang out at the pool. I felt like more of their family at times than my own family.
It's interesting. A lot of adopted people that come on the show have a family that they get close to.
Yeah. I felt that way with my very first girlfriend in high school, and it tore me apart when that didn't work out. I attached to this family atmosphere that I never felt like I had.
Same. I did that.
And that was kind of the struggle I went through with divorce as well. It's not only was I losing my wife that I wanted to remain married with, but she has a great family that I felt really attached to. And we're still cordial to this day. We have 2 kids, so I see them quite a bit. And I still have really close feelings for them. But it's different now that we're divorced. So, yeah.
So did you get in trouble in your teenage years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We would have all hung out with each other.
We would have been great friends, I'm sure.
We're all around the same age. We would have had some fun.
Oh, yeah. I was always off doing stuff on my own once my parents divorced. My dad worked night work. I was left on my own to get myself off to school.
Did you stay with your dad and not your mom?
I did. Yeah.
Interesting.
At first,
same.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I get chatty, and you can.
No, that's the whole point.
You can say, "Hey, I want to ask a question here." Shut up, Sean. Yeah. So I first went with my mom when they lived under separate roofs, but we butted heads so much, and it got to the point where my brother started coming over just to intervene, get in the middle of things. And I don't know if it was my mom's idea. I don't know if it was my dad's idea. It might have even been my idea, but eventually we swapped. So my brother was living with my dad in the family house that was up for sale, where my mom moved out of the house, got an apartment, and I went with her. But after months of this headbutting with my mother, we swapped. My brother went with my mom, and I went with my dad. And I think that's what I wanted. I don't know why. Might have had something to do with the trauma that I didn't even know I had, but that's what had happened. And you know, now here's my dad going off to work, working late work. He's not getting home till after I'm supposed to be off to school. So at a young age, 11, 12 years old, I started, I guess you could say, taking care of myself. It's not like I was left home, or not homeless, but parentless. But I was left to do things that normally you would have a parent around to at least assist with. Yeah, I could get myself showered, dressed, and everything, get ready for school. But now it became easy to start skipping school because there was nobody to make sure I was going off to school.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I started becoming a bully. Um, even to some friends I got along with. It's just something inside of me was angry.
Yeah.
Um,
It's when the
it's
anger started coming out.
Yeah, but then I was able, like, I did have a good friend pull me in my mid-teens, I guess close to 17. I had a friend pull me aside and said, "Dude, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're not becoming fun to hang out with anymore. Something's gotta change with you."
Huh.
And having that conversation, at least for the short term, did change things.
Yeah.
I was able to not show that anger so much. I was able to suppress it. I was able to enjoy being around people and having a good time. Now, 17, 18 years old, still getting into trouble, and we're doing things what teenagers do, underage drinking and all that stuff. But, that kind of went away for a little bit, at least the anger part did. And then, well, with my friends, at least. With my parents, it was still there, because now eventually I started butting heads with my dad when I
Mm-hmm.
became
Well, I mean,
18.
it's understandable, the anger, right? You're the unknown stuff, but relinquished at birth, and the people that took you in get divorced, and then they're really not around. You're on your own. It's the justifiable anger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it is justifiable, but I still have this feeling of guilt inside of me for being part of that, for causing some of it and whatnot.
But you
Um,
really probably didn't cause it. You were reacting.
yeah, I think so, and I
So,
think that's what I'm starting to learn
mhm.
over this past year. And
And
it's
guilt brings more anger. Like I'm a big guilt person. Like I can be guilted easily, not so much anymore, but I have a lot of guilty feelings about things from my past. And I try so hard to be like, okay, see the whole picture, not just take it on. It's very hard, which ends up making you more mad. It's a weird
it is,
thing.
and I can relate. I can totally relate.
Mm-hmm.
So you get through, you go, somehow you manage to get a life and become an adult, and like what, a couple things. First of all, where are your adoptive parents now? Are you still in touch?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny you say I'm an adult, because I am, but I still feel like there's a child inside of me.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think
uh,
all humans maybe feel that way from
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think
My,
that's exclusive to adopted people.
I don't either.
um, my adopted parents are still around. My father he'll be 86 on Christmas Day. My mother is 83. It's easy to remember her age because she's exactly 30 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
She was born on Valentine's Day in 1940, and here I am born 1970. So it's very easy. Anyway, they are still around, and I see them often. We're going to my mom's for Thanksgiving. She doesn't cook anymore, but my girlfriend and I, we're going to go over there, and we're going to do all the cooking. And it's kind of funny is my dad and my mom, even though they're divorced 30, 40, yeah, 40 some years now, they have a very good relationship. And the go-between is my stepmom, my dad's wife. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
whenever there's a family event where we're all getting together, those two, my mom and my stepmom, they're like this. They're just talking to each other. you would think they're best friends since they were teenagers. So that was kind of strange for me. And that didn't happen until I had kids. It was always separate. I'd always go with my
Right.
dad and Maggie, my stepmother, or I would go with my mom, Miriam, for family events or stuff like that. But once I started having kids,
Well, time heals. Like I'm driving down the coast to have modern family Thanksgiving with my ex-husband, his
oh, great.
girlfriend, my son, his girlfriend, my husband, and 10 years ago, I would be like, I wouldn't be doing that. I would tell you no. Sarah would no. I'd say no, no way.
Right, right. And I
So
kind of
what,
still feel that way.
I don't want to get lost here.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we didn't, you had all this information about your birth and your birth mother.
Mm.
Did you meet, and what was the precipice for that happening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I did eventually meet her. I met her in July of 2004. So I was 34 at the time. So I got married in 1997 and wasn't right away, but shortly thereafter, my Renee and I, we started trying to have kids, but we weren't successful. There was a fertility issue. So we started going to fertility specialists. And that's when I started wondering about my medical history, which as adoptees, we all know we don't have medical history as far as we know. Never really thought about it until we started to try and have kids. And then a cousin of mine who's close with my father and was close with me as well, he got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And sadly, they found it too late and he ended up passing from that. But that's what really got the wheels in my head spinning. Hey, I'm trying to have kids. And here's somebody in my adoptive family who died from cancer or who is dying from cancer. What's in my biological history? So
Right.
that's what got the wheels spinning. And that's what got me to eventually go to my mom, Miriam, and say, hey, remember when you used to tell me that there's going to come a time you want to meet your biological mother? I said, well, guess what? And she was accepting of it. She was expecting it, but she still got upset from it. It's a natural reaction, I would imagine, the emotions. But she set me off on the right course. She said, this is where you want to start. It was Philadelphia Catholic Charities or Catholic Services or whatever it was called. Start with them and see what happens from there. So
Were they given very little information about you?
yeah, they didn't really have any information at all. They knew my birth mother was young. They knew she was a teenager, and that was all they really knew. So I ended up calling. I got it right here. Here they are. Catholic Social Services, maybe. Who is it? Yeah, Catholic Social Services in Philadelphia. Explained what I was looking to do, and they said, "Well, write a letter to us. We need it in writing." So I wrote them a letter in January 2004. A month later, they contacted me and told me the process. I had to go meet with them. I had to interview with one of the social workers there. And they wanted to make sure I wasn't some type of derelict that was just going to be looking for money, stuff like that, make sure I was legit, everything. And then they explained to me the whole process. And they said, well, listen, just because we're going to initiate this doesn't mean you're going to meet them. There's a number of outcomes that can happen. They said, one, they might be dead. Two, we might find them. They might not want to have anything to do with you, Three, we might find them and they might want to have something to do with you. And four is we just might not find them at all. And they said it doesn't happen fast. It could take quite a while. I found out by July of 2004. So I found out 4 months later. And
they were willing to help you, the Catholic Charities.
Yeah, they were very gracious about it. Now I had to give a donation, but
I'm sure.
But that was okay.
I'm shocked they were willing to help.
Well, sure, they're always willing to help. I mean,
I don't know.
Part
Catholic services, not so
no,
much.
they do. If you go there and you say, I want to
Mhm.
find my history, they are required to help you out. And I mean, it is part of it. You still need to, they won't give you your unredacted information. There's still a lot of red tape with it. But in theory, that is what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I felt like there was no resistance there whatsoever. I felt, like they're very cooperative. It was just one individual. She's a nun, Sister Rita, I believe her name was, but she was very cooperative, very thorough, explaining all the separate outcomes. So she basically said, don't get your hopes up, you know? And so I didn't, you know, I was like, okay, well, I'm doing what I need to do. And I went about my life. And I remember coming home from work one day. At the time, my wife was working in Atlantic City. So that's about an hour's drive one way.
Mhm.
So I would get home from work before her, and I would start getting stuff ready for dinner and whatnot, clean up dishes. And the phone rings, and I'm standing there at the sink, and it was Catholic Social Services saying, hey, you still want to meet your biological mother? I said, yeah, I'm still interested. And they said, well, sit down because we found her and she wants to meet you too. So, you know, that was kind of like, wow, surreal moment for me. And I wasn't expecting it to come so quick. But we set up a date, you know, Judy, my biological mother, gave them several dates that she was available. They relayed those dates to me. I picked one and they said, okay, you'll have to come to our offices to meet. They didn't want us meeting one-on-one alone.
Meanwhile, you're
Right.
34 and she's presumably in her, early 50s. Like,
She would
give
have
me a
been
break.
54.
Yeah,
Yeah.
give me a
Well,
break. It's annoying. Like, please, we're adults.
exactly.
This is one thing that
Yeah,
is
you have to be supervised.
infuriating is how infantilized
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
your
adult
kid.
adoptees still
Yeah.
are.
Mhm.
Anyway, I just had to vent for 1 second.
No,
Go
no
on.
problem at all.
We need to monitor this meeting.
The Sister Rita needs to be in the room.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in all fairness to her, she wasn't in the room during the conversation. She took me to the room to introduce me to her. And then she said, I'm going to let you guys be. That was in Center
Small
City, Philly.
mercies.
And when I walked in there, it was quite a moment. It was very emotional. She didn't look like anything I expected her to look like, but you know, when I go back and now look at pictures of her when she was younger and pictures of me when I was a baby, I see the resemblance, not so much in our later years. But anyway, we sat in that room alone, the two of us, talking for probably about the better part of 3 hours. And I didn't realize it was that long. It felt like less than an hour. It just felt so natural, you know, which was kind of weird for me at the time because she was a complete stranger to me. But the conversation was really easy, and she
I
made
mean,
it
except
easy.
that she wasn't a complete stranger.
Right. Well, no, she wasn't. But
Yeah.
I didn't think about doing anything prior to the meeting as far as bringing pictures or writing a story down about my childhood or anything like that. It just, to me, I was going there to meet my birth mother and I wanted to know my medical history. I don't know if I was prepared for everything that came along with it,
No.
you know?
So few people are.
Yeah. And I'm still, I don't want to say struggling with it, but, you know, now I've met lots of biological families since that first time meeting her. And
So she's still in your life?
Uh, yeah, she is. We don't talk all the time, but last contact was probably back in September. It's more text messaging than anything, but I'll go visit her at least once a year, have
Does
dinner
she
with her.
still live
She lives
nearby?
close to New Hope. You asked me if I was close to New Hope. She lives in Yardley, which is very close
Okay.
to New Hope. And you know, when we met and in that room, she gave me this journal. She said, I went out and bought a blank journal and she gave me history and pictures and everything
Hmm.
of her family, her siblings. Um, she went on to get married 3 years after giving me up for adoption and
That's what I
had
was going to
three.
ask you. Have 3
Yeah,
kids?
she had 3 kids in that marriage. Ended up getting divorced. Uh, she was divorced when I met her, and I ended up subsequently meeting each one of them. Like, so I met her in 2004, and before the end of that year, I had met each one of my half siblings one time. It was just quick meetings, you know, like an hour or more. I'm sorry, an hour or less. You know, hey, I'm Sean. I'm your, I'm your half brother. How you doing? And it was just kind of awkward, you know.
How'd
And
they
that was
feel
it.
about
Like,
it? Did they know about you? No.
so two of them didn't. So in order, oldest to youngest, there's Megan, Aaron, and Bob. Megan didn't know about me, and Bob didn't know about me. Aaron did, and Aaron only found out about me several years prior to me actually initiating the process to find Judy. It came up. Erin and I have a close relationship now. Years and years later, we've developed this close relationship. But she's told me that, I knew about you when we first met. She said, I knew about you because my mom, in her crazy way, told me about you while we were driving in a car and we stopped at a red light, and out of nowhere, she blurted out, before I met your father, I had a baby out of wedlock and I gave him up for adoption. And you need to know that. And that's all it was. And that's all she talked about. And then Erin's like, well, wait a minute. I got so many questions. But it was something that Judy just didn't want to talk about other than just putting the facts out there. But she didn't tell it to Megan, who was the older sister. Well, Erin's older sister.
It just hit her one day. She had to get it out.
Yeah, I guess it was just on her mind. It was weighing on her mind. And she just blurted it out there in the car out of nowhere. And from time to time, Erin would say, well, don't you ever want to find him? Don't you ever want to meet him? I'm not sure if she ever answered those questions. But yeah, then a couple years later, here I was. She's getting a letter at work saying, hey, your birth child is trying to find you. So it all came full circle eventually.
And did you talk about your father?
Yeah.
So in the initial meeting, she did say, I know where your birth father lives. And I can give you his name if you want to meet him. And at the time, I wasn't even thinking of him. It was more, let me meet you. This is so much to take in and process right now. We can talk about that at another time. She said, I have a friend who's in the FBI, so I keep tabs on him over the years. Oh God. So, she later down the road through conversations took that statement back and said, listen, I thought about me telling you, I could tell you where he's at, and that's not fair to him. Unless I had a conversation with him and he was willing to allow me to give you that information, I won't do that.
Oh no, that should have taken that information.
Yeah. So at the time, again, it really, because it was only several months later, it really didn't bother me that much. But then later on in life, in recent life, as little as 5 years ago, I really started getting curious about him.
Oh, so you went this whole time without?
Oh, I just found out who he was in 2019. So
Wow.
4 years ago.
Did you do you never did any kind of DNA or anything?
Not prior to that. I did DNA in the meantime. Yeah.
And so in all that time, she still wasn't that willing to give up that information since
No, but
2004 until 2019.
I never really pestered her for it.
Okay.
So right after we met, there was this period of time where it was amazing. It felt like we always wanted to talk to each other. There was no texting in 2004. It was, but the cell phone. So we were calling each other or emailing each other. We were having dinner once a month, and when people asked me about how I felt during that time, I equated to, and it's kind of weird, but I equated to like being in high school and having your first love. I always wanted to be around her and be talking to her and be in touch and know what she's doing. But then several months down the road, about a year down the road, we start growing apart, and I can pinpoint to exactly when that happened. We found out that, when I say we, me and my Renee, my now ex-wife, found out that, hey, we're pregnant and it's good. I was sitting with Judy at the time having dinner with her when Renee called me and said, it's a go. So I shared it with Judy, and I know I shared Judy, we're going to have a baby. I'm going to be pregnant. Renee's pregnant. And she said, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to be a grandmother. That was her first thing out of her mouth. And that shocked me to hear her say that. I didn't say it to her, but in my head, I'm thinking, how dare you? I don't know if I was justified in that feeling or not, but here I'm thinking, I got my mother who raised me. I got a mother-in-law, and I have a stepmother who I'm very close with, and they're the grandparents. We just met a year ago, and you're claiming to be this person's grandparent, all right? So that was a bad taste in my mouth, and that's when we started growing apart. It wasn't verbally said, but I think we both realized that something happened there. so I started hearing less from her. She started hearing less from
She
me.
wanted to be in your life more and you weren't. That's the weird thing
Yeah,
about reunion that we never, like Sarah and I always talk about. That's really the beginning of things because it's complicated, right? I mean, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I mean, she really is the grandmother.
biological, she's the grandmother. You're right. But I didn't make that connection.
And I
Right.
guess you weren't in a headspace like now. I think at least for me,
Yes.
the older I've gotten, the more healing and understanding. It's like there's enough love for
For every,
everybody.
Yeah.
And kids
lots of
can
grandmothers.
benefit from more, the kids aren't looking at it in a label
No.
or, and that lens. But yeah, I understand.
Well, I think that was me more being not understanding
Hmm.
everything involved with it. And also, it was a selfish part of me as well. Um, I wasn't mad at her for putting me up for adoption. I never was. And I fully understood why. But I felt like this kid has nothing to do with you. You put me up for adoption. I'm sorry. This kid has nothing to do with you. But I feel differently now. That's just how I felt at the time.
Right. So cut to
I can.
2019 about you go to
So
meet your dad and we keep yeah, I don't want to
I'm
lose
sorry.
Mhm.
that.
I have a tendency to do that. So
That's okay. That's why
No,
I'm
we
right.
love this. Yep.
so shortly before finding out who he was, I did start getting back in contact with my half sister Erin and my half brother Bob. Megan's up in Maine, and there's hardly a relationship there. But Erin and Bob had relationships with them. We get together, go out for drinks, dinner, go over to their place, have dinner, or they would come to my place, so forth, so forth. Came up one day during conversation over dinner. Bob says, "Well, don't you want to know who your biological father is?" I said, "Yeah, I'd like to eventually find out." And then I relayed to them what I told you about what Judy told me. And he's like, "F that. I'm going to find out." And Bob's that kind of guy. Yeah, he's like, "I'm going to push her. I'm going to find out." So the girl I was dating at the time, her and we went out to San Diego to celebrate my birthday in 2019. So I've been 39. And the day after my birthday, I get a call from Bob. He says, "Hey, I got the name." I said, and he says, "You want to know who it is?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Your birth father." I was like, "Oh, crap." So he got it all out of her. He said the name, where he's living. Um, and then from there, I became a Facebook super sleuth. I went on Facebook and started doing some stalking and whatnot. And I came to find out that I had another half brother and another half sister from him. And he was still in the Rochester area. He wasn't on Facebook, but because of his name, I was able to find his daughter. Charlene is her name, but she goes by Cher. Um, but I never reached out. I was scared,
Mhm.
because I didn't know what he would have told his family. I didn't want to mess anything up for anybody. So I just kind of kept all that information. Okay, I know I got a name now. I know where he is. I know I have more half siblings. And I kind of just sat on that for a while. Then a year goes by, and I decided that I'm going to write a letter to him because I was able to find an address through my super sleuth. And I wrote a letter to him. I said, "Listen, I don't want anything. I just want to let you know that, this is me. I have two beautiful daughters." And I just told him a little bit about me. I said, "Hey, if you ever want to meet, I would love to meet you and have a conversation. If not, I understand." And I never heard back from him. Never got it.
Oh.
So at the
Do you know
time,
if
I'm
he got?
thinking,
Do you know if he got the letter?
well, at the time, I didn't know if he got the letter or not because I didn't know if it was the right address. I found several addresses, but it said it was the most recent address. So that's what I wrote to him. Time goes on, then I do this DNA testing, 23andMe and the other one, Ancestry. And I had a match on 23andMe for a first cousin with the last name that I was given on my birth father. I was like, "Oh, crap. So he's down in North Carolina, same last name as my birth father. So I said, let me write this guy a quick note and say, "Hey, any chance you related to Rick?" That's my birth father's first name. And his first response back to me was, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. Are you Rick's son?"
Mm.
And I didn't mention anything about being his son or anything. I was just like, are you related to him?
Well,
You know,
Rick
type of
knew he
thing.
had a son, so
Rick knew he had a son, but he didn't.
right.
But my cousin Tim, who
I mean,
I just
unless
wrote the letter to,
maybe Rick
he
told him about it, or his
Rick never
dad
told
told him.
anybody about it.
Huh.
But Tim's father, Wayne, my uncle, did know. And
Well,
that's when he told Tim. He said, listen, your Uncle Rick did have a son back in 1970, and he never met him or anything like that. So and then Tim reached out back to me, and he said, did you ever think about reaching out to Cher? And I knew who she was at the time, but I told him the same thing I told you. No, I don't want to mess anything up. Don't want to scare anybody. He says, listen, and then another year went by where him and I would just touch base during holidays. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas type things. Hope you're doing well. And then he eventually brought Cher up again. He said, I think you should meet Cher. She would love to know about you. She would love to meet you. Let me do a soft introduction if you don't mind. And I said, oh God, okay. Deep breath.
Scary.
Let's do it. A couple days later, I went on to Facebook and I had a friend request from Cher.
Oh.
And so I wrote her a quick note. She said, how about we talk on the phone? We set up a time to do it over the weekend that was convenient for both of us, and we had a great conversation. And I got another surprise out of it. Well, first I found out that her brother, my half brother, Rick, he had passed away back in like 2014. So that was sad to find out. But she said, hey, I got a surprise for you. There's another one of us. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? She goes, you got another biological half brother. And I come to find out that Rick, after divorcing Cher's mom, went out and got another woman pregnant. And
Some of these guys are busy. Yeah.
Yeah. He couldn't keep it in his pants. And he did not, he denied that it was his child. He paid child support for him for 18 years, but he denied it was his child.
I mean, it's kind of hard to do that these days, but
yeah.
So did you meet Cher? Did you meet Rick? Did you?
So Cher and I continued to talk on the phone from time to time. She's up in Rochester. I'm down here in Philly, so it's about a 5-hour separation driving. And then also I started to talk with Brett. Brett is my half brother who she had told me about. Mm-hmm. He's down in South Carolina. So, there's this gap where it wasn't convenient to hop in the car and go meet each other. So we would just have conversations. And then I started meeting through, not face to face, but through social media and whatnot, uncles, aunts, cousins, all on my biological father's side. And they're all reaching out to me and they're all welcoming me and they're all so open with me. And it was
still no Rick?
No Rick. And what I come to find out is Rick cut off ties with his whole family.
Oh.
And it was shortly before Cher found out about me. And it really
does Cher doesn't talk to him either?
Well, she tried to, but he's not returning. He's with this woman that is my age. So I'm 53, she's about 51, 52. And he's in his 70s. And from what Cher's telling me is she's very manipulative and controlling him. And so he's pretty much estranged from his family that he was very close with. I've seen pictures of Cher growing up and hanging out with Rick, and you could just tell that they were close. And it just breaks my heart. I've accepted the fact that I'm never going to meet this man.
Don't say never.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
In my head, I feel like I'm never going to. In my heart, I feel like I'm never going to meet this man. But what bothers me is that he went and had this relationship with Cher, and he had this close relationship with his siblings and his grandchildren. And from all accounts, from what I've been told, is it was really a tight, close relationship. And all of a sudden, snap of a finger, he's gone. He's not returning phone calls. He's not returning text messages.
Maybe they should do a wellness check on him.
Well, funny enough that his brother did that and he got pissed off. They came and did a wellness check. They found out that it was his brother, Wayne, who lives down in Virginia Beach. He couldn't go check on him himself. So he sent a wellness check and Rick got pissed off at that. he texts the whole family saying, "How dare you do that? You have no right." So
Well,
it's a sad
maybe he'll,
situation.
yeah, maybe he'll eventually come around, time, who knows?
Don't
But
know. Don't know. Everything I hear from the girlfriend that he's with is she's very manipulative, like I already stated. So don't know if that's going to eventually work out. Who knows? We'll see.
well, there's lots of twists and turns to your
Yeah, I
story, and
love
it's
that
been
you.
really great hearing it, and we
And
really
I'm
appreciate you
sorry.
sharing.
I have come to find out that I did send the letter to the right address.
Oh,
'Cause
good.
Oh.
Okay.
Sarah
Okay. Well,
confirmed to me that that was the right address.
So he knows you're
well,
out there.
So he knows. Yes, he
you
knows.
never know. You'll have to keep us informed if there are new developments.
I would love to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I want
please
to stay in
do.
touch about this because it's interesting to me. I stalk on Facebook my half siblings, so I'm getting close. That's it.
Yeah, it's
Sean,
weird.
thank you. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. You got your time frame. I know. So,
Oh no, it's not.
because believe me, I could go on and on and on. You guys shut me up.
I've really enjoyed this morning. Actually, this is
Yeah, I did too.
Oh,
love
I
how you
enjoyed it
tell a
too. Thank you
story.
so much. I was nervous, but you guys made me feel really
Nothing to
comfortable
be
with it.
nervous
So,
about. We're just
well,
Oh
three
my
people
God.
talking, but yes, I understand
you
that.
two are seasoned pros. This is new for me. So
Oh,
I appreciate how comfortable you both made me feel.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your
Thank you.
story with us.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
take
Okay,
care.
take care.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. Happy
Thanks,
too.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
You too.
happy Thanksgiving. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.